ADSL. ADSL is, your covariance, your population size. It's not your primary analysis variable. So you will run into statisticians who try to tell you that, well, it's a subject level variable. It's got to go into ADSL, and tell them no. Depends on how it's being used.
Nancy, this is Benita. Just for the clarification, so right now the way we have it in the ads is the baseline, the value, for example, height or weight or whatever. So those doesn't go into the ADSL data set. They stays in the vitals.
It's a good point. If all you're doing, it's sort of like what's kind of the easiest way to handle it. If all you're doing is baseline height and weight for a study, those are pretty simple. The chances of you messing that one up, are not very big. And if those are the only two things you're adding, you don't really need a data set for two variables, two parameters. So if that's all you've got to do for baseline, yeah, you can go ahead and throw that into ADSL. But for example, I've got a study right now that's got 6 or 7 different questionnaires, and the baseline questionnaire scores all need to get summarized on the baseline characteristics table. And those are messy. They've got imputation rules. There's a whole bunch of other stuff going on in those things. And, we do not want to have to calculate those in ADSL and then recalculate them, again in the questionnaire data sets themselves. So we're pulling those out into a separate data set. So really, it depends on the study. It's hard to come up with a single box for ADAM data sets. It depends on the analysis that you're doing.
Yeah, and that's the reason. Even
having a hard time
working on these for a while, you will oftentimes talk to other ADAM experts to see what their interpretation is, just as a confirmation of what you're thinking yourself.
Lily, and to let you guys know, Lily's having a really hard time with this too, because they're used to ads. An ad is an ad. Pretty much it's the same thing for all study, because they didn't worry about any of the analysis details until they got the TFL programs. So they're used to one size fits all data set, and you can't do that with ADAM. It's really dependent on how you're using the data. So they're having a really hard time with that right now.
Yeah. So, got a question going on here right now with Aisha as well, and that is that the informed consent is not in the CRF. So yeah. It is in the disposition data set, but we don't have it actually annotated within the CRF.
They collect it somewhere, because I know it gets into DS.
Mm-hmm. And I know we had it there. I'm not quite sure what happened to it, so I'm going to have to investigate that one.
Oh, you mean in our sample data?
In our sample data. We've got it in disposition. We've got it in the DS domain. Mm-hmm. But we don't have the annotated CRFs updated with the informed consent.
Okay, got it.
So, as the statistician for this study, you want to use informed consent obtained. So, if there are any other questions, though, please go ahead and shoot questions off to either myself or to Nancy. But I do want, if there's nothing else, I do want to go ahead and get into the BDS, just because BDS is going to take a little bit of effort to work through. And it's where I can say right now, folks have the biggest struggle. ADSL, because if you think about it, it's one record per subject and wide. All of us have been most comfortable with those kind of data set structures. But BDS is a totally different data set design. And this is where you're going to have to understand some stuff. So I want to go into it now a little bit and get you thinking. And then we'll go over some of to write analysis. Instead, they went to a BDF structure, which allows extreme flexibility because it is normalized. And when I say normalized, it's that one record per analysis. It's a very long data set. It's longitude as opposed to horizontal. Okay? It can contain observed data, derived, imputed. It can also come from SDTM or ADAM. Remember the data sets and the flow diagrams we had on Tuesday, is that I pointed that the source of data for any BDS can be either the SDTM domains or it can be another ADAM data set. As a matter of fact, the example that we just walked through was, in fact, one case where you're going to take one ADAM data set, ADSL, and merge it to another ADAM, or merge it to another data set, such as SDTM. Think about labs, and then take two Excedrin and a long drink of something. For labs, you may have to take ADSL and pull the population flags by subject and merge it into the lab, so you know what subject data to pull into the analysis. Okay? William, let me get started on this, and then I'll come back and answer your. Go ahead and ask the question. All right?
No problem. Thank you.
But data can be copied from ADSL. It contains timing variables, and it also contains analysis parameters and indicators. Okay? It may also contain additional variables, such as your covariance. So think about if you're analyzing by age group, where you've got two different age groups. Those would be pulled over from ADSL. It also contains what's known as your data point traceability. That one keyword I keep driving back, and that is the traceability of ADAM all the way back. You're going to pull from the SDTM domain the sequence numbers for the records that you're using. So that from a traceability